Oh boy, the end of Absolute Power is the biggest disappointment in my DC Comics reading in a long time, very sadly. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything I talk about. This is your first and only warning. We're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on October 23rd, originally published September 25th and October 2nd. I'll just briefly talk about a couple of these comics. There's three, and the one I'm going to spend most of my time on is Absolute Power number 4, which closes out the big crossover event. But first, briefly, Action Comics number 1069. I just skipped the main story. I just couldn't be less interested than I already am in the main story. But the backup story has been something I've been interested in. This conflict between Lois and Clark, as Lois has been the editor of the Daily Planet, and given the complexities of the double life that Clark is leading, she kind of had changed some things about what he was doing at work out of like a ethical integrity, or whatever you call it in the business, conflict of interest. But she was handling it in a very unreasonable way, and I was hoping to see her and them, come around and really be able to talk about this conflict, talk about, where they've kind of misstepped. I was seeing more of the things that Lois was missing, but I really appreciated this exchange between the two of them, where Clark acknowledged, that he had a blind spot as well. He thought that he was never placing himself above the law and above, what's appropriate as a reporter and stuff. But he was acknowledging, what, I do have a bit of a blind spot. I can't assume that I'm going to be objective when I'm reporting stories about friends, So I just appreciated the complexity that they allowed to come to the surface in the resolution of this, and that really the whole story was just a single conversation between a husband and wife working through this stuff. And I think it could have been drawn out, and they could have done some even more interesting things with it, but I'm very happy as it is with how it turned out, even with the complexities of it, with both of them coming with humility, saying, you know what, here's where I screwed up, and I'm sorry. And that's a really good model just for conflict in general, but also a really good model for repairing things that have kind of gone down a rough path in a marriage. So I appreciated the backup story. It's over now, and a new main story is going to be starting next month, presumably a new backup story as well. So we'll see what comes in Action Comics 1070. But at the very least, I liked the ending of the backup story in 1069. Then in Absolute Power Origins, number 3 of 3, we finish up the origin story of really Amanda Waller. And I have appreciated up to this point the complexity of Amanda Waller's character, her morality, that really what she has done, despite going totally off the deep end in her desire to control superheroes and to make decisions without the real support of the government. She just blackmails people. She just does people dirty in any way that she needs to in order to get what she wants. And in her mind, because of the tragedy she suffered and the injustice she suffered that involved the death of her husband and the death of 2 children of hers, she is in a place that in some ways is understandable. Even though we would disagree, and we are supposed to disagree with her methods, there are some aspects of her motive, at least, that we can understand. And I really wish that I saw more of this side of Amanda Waller represented in the main Absolute Power story. I think that you would think that like a backup story like this, a side story like this, is meant to provide some background for Amanda Waller's character so that as we read the main Absolute Power story, we would feel that complexity, we would feel that pull, we would feel that tension inside of us where we say, yes, she's doing some really bad things, but man, she comes from a really tragic, difficult place, and there's some ways in which I can understand her, and so she's not just a mustache twirling villain. However, sadly, by the end of Absolute Power number 4, we get a resolution that turns Amanda Waller into, a stereotypical, stupid, foolish, mustache twirling villain that is almost throwing a tantrum at the end for how she loses, and it's really disappointing. Let's get into it, because there's several things in Absolute Power number 4 that I was really disappointed by. First, just a little moment that was bittersweet. We've got John Kent having just recovered from the Brainiac components removed from having them removed from his body. So he is, as he says, I'm still not at 100%, but I'm strong enough to basically help with whatever the plan is, And it's just kind of bittersweet. The John Kent Super Son one-shot issue that released last week apparently takes place after Absolute Power number 4, so the publishing schedule, I guess, got a little bit off. So coming back here and seeing he's still fresh from his injuries, it's bittersweet, because I'm like, oh man, I appreciate just how damaged he was, because I saw so much potential there. But as I mentioned last week in Essential Issues, they really missed a lot of the potential that they could have played up in Jonathan Kent's recovery. So this was just a bittersweet reminder that, yeah, they really don't take advantage of this whole plot point in Absolute Power with John Kent. Now, one element that is almost equal parts cool and disappointing is how they reverse the power stealing accomplished by the Amazo androids. I mean, they went to great pains to say early on, no, this is permanent. You are not getting your powers back. This is an irreversible thing. Well, what we learn in this issue, unless it was revealed earlier and I forgot, is that the Amazo androids are able to self-repair so effectively because it's based on time manipulation technology. Whenever they are damaged, this device gets triggered so that locally, just the aura around them, all that space gets reversed backward in time to a point prior to their injuries, to being destroyed, whatever. And so they're not actually regenerating. And I think that's really clever, because, something that could totally destroy something, and you would say there is nothing in the functionality of that person's biology, of that machine's repair technology, whatever the thing is, there's nothing that could reasonably heal them from this. Well, strictly speaking, they're not healing. They're going backward in time. And so that's a really clever concept. Well, the heroes figured this out, and so they realize that the trick is going to be to use some cool super tech to reverse the polarity and put things on the fritz and cause a chain reaction, or whatever kind of like technobabble you want to use, and they do use some technobabble, but basically trigger all these things to reverse each Amazo back in time to the point before they had absorbed all the powers from heroes, and in that way reversing that process and returning the powers to the heroes that they were taken from. And so it in some ways does feel a little bit too easy, but at the same time, I said from the beginning, they're going to have to come up with something very inventive in order for it to be satisfying, to get around this idea of them emphasizing this is permanent, Well, it actually was permanent, but the clock got turned back, and it wasn't just like traveling through time or whatever. It's this little bit more localized concept. So I appreciate the ingenuity of that. And at the end of the day, it's like I'll call it even. I'm satisfied with that. We're good. Then there was a moment where I thought, okay, maybe we're going to play with some moral complexity here. We're going to acknowledge moral complexity in this story. Amanda Waller, when things start turning on her in frustration, among other things, she says, all I ever wanted was to bring justice to an unjust world. And really, I'm with her and I'm thinking, isn't that what all these superheroes want to do? What's the difference? The difference is her methods. The difference is her personal moral code, which is, unless we believe in an objective standard for morality, is just a different code, no better and no worse than any of these other superheroes. And I think that point could have been brought up, that listen, I just want to bring justice to an unjust world, and my code, my values just happen to be different from yours. So the only reason you guys are winning and considered the good guys is because there's a larger number of you with the same particular moral code, and I'm just an outlier, you know? I think there would have been an opportunity to really get the reader to reflect on that difference, because at the end of the day, this is what heroes are saying they want to do. They just live by a different moral code. I think the writer is kind of counting on us as readers sharing enough in common in our various moral codes to agree that Amanda Waller is in the wrong. But in order for that to be true of readers, you have to turn Amanda Waller into someone that is so obviously wrong, so that the greatest number of readers will agree that she is wrong, that she loses her complexity. She loses something that's really interesting about her. And that's really what happens by, I think, the end of this story compared to what was going on in Absolute Power Origins. The next disappointing moment is when Green Arrow, Oliver Queen, who's been working for Amanda Waller this whole time, suddenly changes sides. Now remember, it had been established he was not being mind controlled by Waller. So he hadn't been brainwashed. He hadn't been fooled. He knew what her agenda was, and he agreed with it. And we've never gotten an explanation as to why this was the case. And I thought this could be a great turning point for Green Arrow to make him more of a complex character, morally speaking, which would certainly help him stand out when, let's face it, his power set, quote unquote, is not that fascinating, not that great a competitor with all the other superhero concepts. So when you have a street level hero, I think you have to do things with their character that make them interesting. Well, Green Arrow is known for being pretty liberal and left leaning, and so in some ways it would make sense that he would agree that the government should have more control, should take more action. So in that way, I was like seeing a connection between what we know of Ollie in the past and what Amanda Waller is doing right now, which is really heavy-handed. I mean, she's kind of acting in her mind as like the ultimate form of the government, even though she's doing stuff that the normal government doesn't know about, you know. So I could see kind of a connection there, but they hadn't built it for me yet, so I was still waiting for that. What is the reason? How did he get convinced? Well, suddenly there's this turn here. They got the device that's going to reverse time for all the Amazos, but it doesn't have an opportunity to reach its target. Well, Green Arrow, Oliver Queen, sees the device on the ground, and he says, "There you are. Sorry to take it from you, Bats," meaning this moment where Batman was going to, you know, bring the victory to the team. But he picks it up, sticks it on the end of one of his arrows, and says, "But heroes got a hero." So as if to say, like, I'm a hero again. I've always been a hero or whatever, and now I'm going to join you guys. So it's this very sudden turn, and I'm like, what? We didn't even get an explanation for why he was on Amanda Waller's side in the first place. So the explanation better be really good, because this seems way too simple. Well, he does in fact land the hit. The Amazo androids get reversed back in time. All the powers go back. Interestingly, the fallout that, you know, it's more of a conceptual power superhero-y fallout than an interesting moral fallout. But like all the superpowers get either sent back to who they were taken from, or because there's some unexplained glitch in this whole process, they get given to other heroes, the wrong heroes, or people maybe that weren't even heroes or villains to begin with. So Superman, for example, seems to be fine and have all his powers back, but Fire and Ice, Justice League classic, you know, 80s, 90s Justice League members get their powers reversed. So Ice now has Fire's powers, and Fire now has Ice's powers. Meanwhile, Amanda Waller starts throwing her tantrum, just saying, "No, no, no," as she's watching this on the monitors. And this is where heroes in the writing really kind of start mocking her. And so it really puts her in this humiliated place. And I feel like a villain like Amanda Waller, as they've been building her up at this point, should always exit, even if her plans are defeated, should always have a contingency plan that at least gets her out of the situation, allows her to get away, to be a threat on another day. But they really just demolish Amanda Waller as a threat, to the point where it's like, I don't see how she's going to be a threat to anybody ever again. Nightwing says, "What's wrong? Your dream is over? You're out of contingency plans?" And just when she thinks she's going to get away, Dreamer, who was killed a few issues ago, comes exploding out of a portal and punches her And she's going to join in a moment in just kind of like the mocking of Amanda Waller, but we'll come back to that. Let's look at the Green Arrow situation. Blue Beetle says, "Whoa, Ollie the rat is the the one that's doing this. What's going on?" He says, "Ollie the Manchurian rat. I had to earn Waller's trust, but lying wasn't enough. Not with all her mind readers and psychics. No, I had to genuinely believe in her cause." He says, "which I did." And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. But then he says, "until John Jones' telepathic implant timed out as planned." So he didn't really himself believe in Amanda Waller's plan. I hate this. Because it plays into the overly simplistic us versus them mentality that is just so loud and obnoxious online when people have different points of view. There's no room for a complex middle ground, or there's no room for a person to agree with those on this side of the spectrum in these particular ways, but strongly disagree with them in these other particular ways. No, we've got to be neatly grouped and categorized into either us or them. And that's what this does with Oliver Queen. It makes it so that he was always one of us the whole time. He was just working undercover. No, he wasn't brainwashed by Amanda Waller. He was brainwashed by the Martian Manhunter because he wanted to, and that was part of his whole undercover plan. I think it would have been so much more interesting and engaging. And honestly, I think useful to our discourse today online as we're disagreeing on different issues. So much more interesting if Oliver Queen would have agreed with some significant elements of Waller's agenda. But at some point, while siding with her, realized that she was taking things too far, or that, yeah, it's too neat, it's too simple, and I couldn't be less interested in Oliver Queen as a character now. Very, very disappointing. Okay, well, let's come back to Dreamer, who came out of the portal, punched Amanda Waller, and turns out that, how did she survive? Well, because, let's get to this. I thought maybe it was a time reversal thing, like maybe somehow she got swept up in the time reversal stuff of the Amazo androids. But she explains, you can't kill a dream, not if it's remembered. And I'm like, these are poetic statements. Why would that have any bearing on actual reality? Whether we're talking about physical reality or some kind of a mental reality or spiritual reality, however you want to explain Dreamer's powers, which I don't know the explanation for, I don't know the character that well. But the justification for her survival is based on poetic language. You can't kill a dream, not if it's remembered. And then that becomes concretely explained by saying John Kent, dreamed of me constantly while he was under Brainiac Queen's control. He wouldn't let me go. Without realizing it, he literally pulled me into the dreamscape. That gave me the chance to rebuild myself, healing in his dreams. And I'm like, oh man. I don't know if I've ever heard it. Can you call this technobabble, or is it poetic babble? I don't know where you draw the line between the two here, but I find this very unsatisfying. We can just say whatever we want now, and we can reverse whatever, I mean, both this and Ollie's reversal seem deceptive. They seem like they're just changing the rules. I suspected Dreamer would come back because of the way she was killed, almost offhandedly. And also because I think she's a kind of a protected character because of some of the themes that are being played with, the left-leaning themes that are being played with her character. So she wasn't going to be there'd be too much of an uproar, I think, if she was killed. But it seems very unearned and very Deus Ex Machina, just like the thing with Ollie, where it's like, okay, yeah, we went to great pains to say he's not being brainwashed by Amanda Waller. But then to say he's being brainwashed by Martian Manhunter feels like a cheat, So this is the second reversal or fix that seems very cheap and unearned to me. Then one of the cheapest moments is Amanda Waller in a rage over realizing that, that they've thwarted at least this big chunk of her plans. She starts monologuing and in a rage says, the people you protect, you're dead to them. I fooled every last one of them. I used the Queen's AI to show the entire planet what I want them to know, that superheroes are monsters. Do you hear me? We're just halfway through this rant, and I'm like, yes, I hear you, and I also know where this is going because I've read comic books before, you know? Oh my gosh. I've read comic books, I've seen movies, I've watched a few TV shows. We all know where this is going, and Amanda Waller is so brilliant that it is so frustrating to me and cheap and unearned for her to be fooled this way, to make this kind of blunder. Do you hear me? She continues ranting. Thanks to that one play, the world's governments will run off this earth before they let you so much as save a bleeping cat from a bleeping tree. I won. And then, of course, what's going to happen? We know this was recorded. We know somebody had something in their back pocket. Oh, okay. It turns out Nightwing had Airwave along. He shows up, says, hey, you've been hanging out with bad guys for too long, Waller. I was like, yeah, no kidding. What the crap is up with that? That was the straight-up villain rant I was counting on. Well, it was not the one I was counting on. I was counting on a resolution that would be a little bit more consistent with Waller's character. Now, of course, you can justify it. You can justify Lex Luthor doing something similar because at the end of the day, Luthor is more prideful than he is brilliant. I think we could probably say. But it would still feel cheap if this happened to Luthor, the way it's happening to Waller here. I don't know. Maybe there are many readers that this did not feel cheap and unearned to, that it felt very appropriate, very satisfying. I, sadly, am not among them. So he explains, Airwave is a living Wi-Fi signal. He can did capture your little tantrum. And I'm like, yeah, tantrum is the right word for it. What the crap? And broadcast it to every phone, he goes on, every computer, every screen on planet Earth. The world knows it was duped. And just like that, this whole thing that Waller did has been reversed. And it would have been so much more interesting for the heroes over a stretch of time to have to recover their reputation. For Oliver Queen to have to recover his reputation. I thought that this story had the potential to be the identity crisis of today. If you've never read Identity Crisis, it is a controversial story from, I don't know, 15, is it as many as 20 years ago now? But it basically suggests that heroes back in the day did something to villains, messed with their minds, with like manipulation. It was Zatanna that did it, not Martian Manhunter, to basically remove all of their truly sadistic character qualities. And in that way, it was an interesting retcon explaining why stories back in the 60s and the 50s and stuff, the villains were all kind of silly. They were kind of buffoons. They weren't really evil threats. They weren't raping women. I mean, they weren't truly vile in the way that real-world criminal behavior is. And there was a big fallout from that. There was distrust among the heroes, and it was controversial. I know that some folks who listen to my content or watch my content have told me they hated that because of how it tarnished their heroes, and they wanted their heroes to be representatives of good that we could look up to in every respect across the board. I am content for heroes to largely be that, but now and then, just like all of us, make some mistakes and sometimes some really bad ones. I think stories can still acknowledge a high moral standard even if they don't have characters that are always living up to that moral standard. That's why I liked Superman acknowledging in the backup story of Action Comics 1069, Lois, I had a blind spot. You're right, I was wrong. Superman saying that he was wrong, you know? And we love him all the more for it. But to have that moment, Superman has to be wrong, you know? And of course, there are degrees of wrong that we could find satisfying or intolerable. I understand that, you know? I just wanted something more here. It didn't have to put the world in as dark a place, and it didn't have to tarnish heroes in the way that Identity Crisis did. But it could have left the DC universe in a much more interesting place that I think would be easy for us to relate to. You know, so many of us feel misunderstood by others and judged unfairly by others. Imagine a DC universe with a bunch of heroes in it that we admire, that we look up to because they're doing the right thing even when they are misunderstood and slandered against by the world. I think so many people can relate to that. Yes, I know that historically Marvel and mutants and stuff, that's more of a thing associated with them. But Marvel has gone, from what I understand, pretty bright and light compared to DC. I would have loved for DC to still represent some more of the complexities of trying to do the right thing in a dark and broken world. Instead, we get what feels like a way too easy insta-fix. Bummer. And like it's almost emphasized by the amount of panels that we see after this. So the world knows it was duped. Next panel, it's over, Amanda, you're through. Then we say 48 hours later. And the next the next square of dialogue says, I wish this were a cleaner victory, but it's not. So it's like, yep, that's right, it's victory now. What do they mean by we wish it was a cleaner victory? That there's still some fallout, there's still some ways in which heroes and characters are going to be misunderstood at this point? No, instead, as I mentioned earlier, it's more like superhero-y concept stuff that is not as nice and tidy. They've lost access to the multiverse at this point, which I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like I don't know that does anything interesting for the DC universe. I think it maybe closes off some opportunities, if anything, but I'm not really super into stories about the multiverse anyway, so I don't see this as like an improvement or a particular problem for the DC universe. Barry Allen also lost his super speed powers, but we've already been leaning in the Flash comics into Wally being kind of like the premier and fastest Flash, so this doesn't seem like a big deal. I'm wondering if the resolution of him getting powers back will in some way help differentiate Barry Allen and Wally West so that they can both be, I don't know, Flashes that are worth getting excited about in terms of their power set. So I don't know. I'll be interested to see kind of what the road is for Barry getting his powers back. Well, then we cut to Waller's jail cell, and speaking of monologuing and mocking and stuff, this is where Dreamer really gets to just cut loose. And it's frustrating to me. I don't like seeing Waller like this. I wanted her to at least get away. But now she's been suddenly written to behave like a foolish toddler, just yelling and screaming and not being thoughtful at all, just a complete deconstruction of what Amanda Waller has been up to this point. So Dreamer explains that Waller now has a solitary life sentence in Belle Reve, or Belle Rev, however you pronounce that. Waller says, this is pointless. I've got so much on so many people. I'm going to blackmail my way out of here, and it's, I'm going to be right back to my scheming, essentially. But Dreamer says, oh, really? Where's the Batcave? And suddenly, Waller can't remember. Dreamer says, what's Green Lantern's alter ego? How about Mary Marvel's? Where do the Birds of Prey meet? Where is Booster Gold from? Dreamer then explains that the time that she spent with Waller, and Waller kind of using her and training her and stuff, helped her to gain an understanding of her powers so that she could learn to tap into Waller's memories and mess with them. And Amanda Waller says, you erased my memories? And Dreamer says, no, that would be unethical. You always complained about how squeaky clean we do-gooders are. Superman and his friends would never approve if they knew. So she's saying two things. One, that the other heroes don't know what she's done, but she's also being technically accurate in saying that she didn't remove Waller's memories, or she didn't erase them. Dreamer says, I didn't erase any secrets. After I used them to find my parents, I just moved them, locked them all away. Well, pretty much. But they seem right there, don't they? Right on the tip of your tongue. Try remembering, say, Cyborg's real name. Try hard. And Waller can almost get it. She's like, I can't. So we can tell that she does still have this information in her mind, so at least there's a potential for her to unlock it later, which I'm sure they'll do at some point, but I would have found it so much more interesting for her plan to be foiled, but for us to know that Amanda Waller is still out there and she still knows Batman's secret identity, that That would be awesome. That would be a great way to have her always out there, know that, oh, we always have to be alert. We always have to be on the lookout for what Waller's next move is going to be. That's how I want to feel when a truly good villain has been defeated. But here, they've just taken her off the board, clearly not permanently, but to such a humiliated degree that it makes her so less interesting of a villain than she was up to this point. For villains to be interesting, I need to feel like they can always be a threat tomorrow. And I don't feel that as much as I'd like here, not near as much. And then we got more taunting and mocking from Dreamer, going on and on and on about, you know, how it's going to be so bad for Waller now, and she's just so glad that it's going to be so bad. I'm sad, you're mad. Yeah, what is it? Too bad, so sad. I'm glad you're mad. Just like this. So, I mean, this seems a little bit childish on the side of Dreamer as well. I think it's supposed to feel like cathartic for me as a reader to see Amanda so utterly defeated, but when they make a whole 3-part miniseries giving her origin story and establishing for us motives that I can at least partially agree with, they humanize her, then this is weird. Now they're asking me to just totally other her, just totally other Amanda Waller, to not value her as a human being and to actually feel satisfied when she is being mocked and taunted. And the cherry on the top is that when Waller says, I'll find my way back, I always do, Dreamer says, okay, try not to strain your mind too much, though. After all, secrets might not be the only thing hidden in your brain. And Waller says, a bomb. Did you put a bomb in my head? Mine? Answer me! Answer me! So again, she's screaming impotently and may even have one of her own brain bombs in her head. So in this utterly weak and defeated place, it's a bummer. It's a bummer because heroes are only as great as their best villain or their worst villain, depending on how you want to phrase that. And the potential of Amanda Waller, I mean, like, I think I'm always going to remember that she was reduced in this way. And I don't think they're going to give her a platform to really, a story platform to really come back and make up for this kind of moment. She's just like stained by this level of defeat in my mind. Well, one potentially at least kind of interesting thing at the end of this all is that Ollie is talking to Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman, and in addition to kind of like apologizing and saying, yeah, sorry, I had to play things the way that I did, and, you know, I made some mistakes and whatnot, but one thing I want to fix right now is having a Justice League, that we disbanded it a while back. The Titans, hey, they've done a great, admirable job in our absence, but we got to get the band back together. And you know what? We need to be bigger than before, more coordinated, more proactive, more. And I'm like, okay, yeah, there's the liberal talking. You know, we gotta get more hands-on all around the world. You know, start our own little government they called the Justice League or whatever. You know. So I mean that sounds a little bit more like Ollie. And it turns out that the other three have been thinking along those lines, and the tease that we get at the end is the next event, which is called DC All In, which we've been seeing ads for at this point. And so apparently that had maybe partly has to do with everybody in the Justice League now. Like, not only did Amanda fail at getting rid of the Justice League and heroes and all that kind of stuff, now potentially they are all going to be operating under one organized banner. So it'll be interesting to see. They got the All-In Special being teased, and also Justice League Unlimited with a logo that is reminiscent of the animated series logo, Justice League Unlimited, which was also about just getting every hero in the DC universe we could think of signed up for this much larger version of the Justice League. And they show a holographic blueprint of the satellite, also reminiscent of, years past, in addition to the animated series. So it's clearly meant to appeal to those who were in the target audience of Justice League Unlimited when it was airing, which, you know, would be at the right age to be buying comics and enjoying them now, certainly. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But, you know, there's potential, of course, for the authority structure, the power structure of this new Justice League Unlimited to be called into question. I think that would be an interesting follow-up to what happened in Absolute Power, but are they going to do that? Given the lack of moral complexity that Absolute Power ended with, are they going to explore those kinds of themes in Justice League Unlimited, or is this just going to be a reason to get a bunch of heroes together and showcase a bunch of different heroes? Hey, I'm up for that too. I like that. I love the DC universe, and I'd love to see some neglected characters get some shine, you know. I'm all on board for that. I'm just saying, missed opportunity with Absolute Power, and I wouldn't be surprised if they missed another opportunity to do some really interesting thematic stuff, dramatic stuff, morally complex stuff with where they go next. Well, if you didn't notice already, if you're watching the video version, I'm wearing the red ring as my ring selection. You know, I mean, I get myself kind of juiced up when I'm recording, but I'm not losing any sleep over this. When I'm reading it, I'm just going like, bummer, you know. But I mean, yeah, the red ring, I guess, would be the closest thing to just mildly irritated, disappointed, or whatever, you know. But I'm a big fan of DC. I'm going to show up next week and see what they have next. I would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. Bunch of content for you and exclusive stuff if you want to support Christian Geek Central. All of those links are at christiangeekcentral.com, so I hope you'll check all that out as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. It is time again for Christian Geek Central's annual Game Save event, fundraising for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which provides free treatment for children facing life or death circumstances and shares its cutting-edge, life-saving research with hospitals all over the world. You're still welcome to join the Game Save team by following the link in the description below. Once again this year, I'm drawing attention to our team's fundraising by performing a 24-hour marathon of video gaming that I will stream live on youtube.com/ChristianGeekCentral beginning 6 a.m. Arizona time on Saturday, November 9th. You can donate or get more info by clicking on my fundraising page in the links below, where you will also find incentives and rewards for doing so. For $5, you can choose a topic for me to share my sometimes overly strong opinions on during my live stream. For $10, you get the previous reward and a download code for a free copy of the Spirit Blade Special Edition audio drama. For $20, you get the previous rewards and you can choose a game for me to play during my November 9th live stream. Pick a favorite or torture me with something terrible or rage-inducingly difficult. For $30, you get the previous rewards and can choose a song for me to sing during my live stream. Pick an old favorite of yours or just make me humiliate and torture myself with something no one wants to hear. And for $50, you get all the previous rewards and a download code for every MP3 product at spiritblade.com. That's a $90 value. On top of that, I have set fundraising milestones that will unlock fun or weird happenings as I reach them. At $200, I'll have a free download day for everyone who visits spiritblade.com on November 16th. And as my total goes beyond $200, I'll unlock increasingly more content for that free download day. And depending on how far beyond $200 my fundraising goes, during my November 9th live stream, I will cover my face in peanut butter and jelly while talking about horror movies, put on a pair of Frozen socks and a Frozen t-shirt at the same time, shoot water up my nose with a turkey baster, and have my wife Holly play a video game with me for 30 minutes. And if I reach a personal fundraising total of $500 or more, I will schedule a 6-hour bonus live stream before the end of the year to either try and finish Dragon Age Inquisition as my bitter old wizard Eldarest, or start a new roleplay focused playthrough as, well, that's a secret for now. Finally, if I reach my $500 goal by the end of Thursday, October 24th, I will do a 4-hour Get Good live stream before the end of the year, playing a frustratingly difficult game in my collection. Probably another NES Castlevania title. Now, there are some stipulations and time limits on those rewards and milestones, so quickly follow the link below to my fundraising page for all the details. This year will mark 10 years since our first gaming-themed charity fundraiser for kids in great need of medical care. I hope you'll be a part of celebrating that and helping me and the Christian Geek Central Game Save team do some good for some kids who really need it. Then please join me at youtube.com/ChristianGeekCentral for my 24-hour marathon starting at 6 a.m. Arizona time on Saturday, November 9th. Hope to see you then. Oh my gosh. This is all kinds of wrong.